about. When the prison came about, it really came, in many ways, a very American thing. There were other forms of punishment that were similar, but they were very different than what the Americans came up with. We had this idea, and the Quakers in particular had an idea that prison could be something that could be rehabilitative. We came up with the idea of the penitentiary, and at the root of the word penitentiary is penitence. The idea was that you could pay penitence, that you could give penitence, that you could atone for your sins. And so the Quakers decided that they'd create a space where you'd go to this place and you'd reflect. They gave them a Bible, they gave them a bed, they read, they reflected, and they came out into the world better citizens. The problem is, when Eastern State Penitentiary was created and these other penitentiaries were created, they weren't created for black and brown folk. And they weren't connected to the economic logic of America. This was purely a project about making white people whole again. Then suddenly, when black folk start going to jail, it's a whole other thing. It's no longer about rehabilitation. It's about exploitation. Remember, the prison begins after slavery. You had all these people on all these plantations, all these farms who were making money. America is built on the exploitation of black labor. America is built on slave labor. So slavery ends, and suddenly the slave codes turn into black codes, right? Because the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, right? But it only abolishes slavery except under the condition of prison. In other words, if you commit a crime, if you're incarcerated, according to the 13th Amendment, slavery is still allowed.
So you're technically a slave if you're in prison.
Absolutely. You can legally be told what to do, your labor can be forced, etc. So so think about it like this. You need slaves to keep the economy going. You don't have slaves anymore unless people commit a crime. So what do? You make everything a crime. So suddenly the slave codes became the black codes. So now black people can be arrested for vagrancy, for standing outside, for cursing in front of a woman, for being out of town without a job. All of these things, which are fairly arbitrary crimes, or if crimes at all, they take them and they throw them back into the prison. And then they have something called the convict lease system, where the prison can lease the convicts out to the same plantations they left to do the same work that they did as slaves. So now the slaves have become free only to become slaves again through prison. And that is a system that we're dealing with right now, a new version of the convict lease system. And that's why labor is exploited. And that's why prisons have become even more for profit. That's why we see more privatization, because people make money in this country of exploited labor. And this is one example of it.